Everyone, welcome to the show. It's nice to see you. I hope you guys had a good weekend. Got a fresh week of content here. We also have a dog who has brought a beaver onto the set today. The beaver was the second toy that he ever got. The first one is his favorite one. He only has 2 toys. That's his second one and his second most favorite, as it turns out. But anyway, in case you were wondering, Finn likes the beaver, everyone. So let's talk today about how much money do you actually need to buy a house? And the key word is need. Let's talk about necessity versus how much you would like to have, because I would like to have really the real deal number at the end of the day is 6 million post-tax, 10 million pre-tax, but that's not how much money I need, right? So let's talk about how much money you need to buy a house, because it's important to look at this when you're heading into the house hunting process. We talk about this all the time. I've had this conversation with a couple clients recently. So, of course, you would like to have 20% to put down for a down payment, or you'd probably like to have 100% of the price of the home, but not necessary, right? So here's the things that you really need to budget for. Number one is closing costs. And we've talked about this on multiple episodes, but I assume that you don't necessarily see everything that we put out. So closing costs as a rough average, right? Because some people typically say like 3% of the price of the house, which in my opinion historically is high. I typically see it a little bit less than that. So if you said a $300,000 house, 3% would be $9,000. I think $9,000 closing costs on a $300,000 house would be ridiculous. Like, unless there's some shit in there to like really buy down your interest rate or something like really crazy, but 3% would be high. But let's just sort of take an average and say, hey, your closing costs are going to be in the neighborhood of $5,000 to $10,000. So, you know, I don't know, find somewhere in there that you think might be good, or maybe ask a lender or something. Hey, what's roughly what the closing cost would be on a house, you know, this much in this area? Because it's going to depend on property taxes and some different things like that. Obviously, your interest rate's going to play a factor in that as well. But a thing to understand is that your earnest money will become part of your closing costs. We haven't talked about down payment yet. We'll get there. But if you, let's just say, put down $5,000 on your earnest money, just to kind of throw out round numbers, you put down $5,000 on your earnest money, which is like good faith money. It's just to show that you're serious and you're making an effort to really buy the house. So you put down $5,000 in earnest money, and let's say it's a VA loan. So there's no actual down payment that you're making, but you get to the end of the deal and you've got, let's say, $7,000 in closing costs. That $5,000 from your earnest money would roll over into that $7,000 that you owe at closing. Therefore, you'd only come in with $2,000 cash to close, because the $5,000 from earnest went to a $5,000 credit towards your closing cost. Now you need $2,000. I think that makes sense. If I'm talking too fast, ask questions down below. Next thing is you need to set aside some cash for an inspection. This is totally separate. This is really like a separate line item. It's not a down payment. It's not earnest money. It's not closing costs. It's none of those. It's in the, you know, if we're just going to be safe, let's just say it's about $500 that you should set aside. You, in particular, should set aside $500 because you have not paid rent once since you fucking lived in this house. But you should set aside about $500 for an inspection. Total separate line item, not down payment, none of that stuff. $500 for an inspection. Probably a little high, but depending on if you add in things like a meth test, as in for a meth lab, or like radon, if there's like localized things that, you know, is advised that you check on. Like radon is a thing that we kind of have here in the, you know, Rocky Mountain kind of west. It's in the soil, it's a gas, you don't want it in your house, right? So you want to check. The other thing would be cash for going over the purchase price and backing that up in like an appraisal addendum. So we had a client recently, we were talking to him about this. We just said, how much cash do you have? We go, okay, cool, that's how much. I say, hey, look, let's try to earmark of your cash, let's try to earmark about $5,000 of it for going over the listing price. So the house is $300,000. Let's offer them $305,000, right? But that $5,000 above the listing price, we will back it up in the form of an appraisal addendum. We'll say, hey, look, as long as your house appraises at $300,000, if it doesn't appraise for the $305,000, we'll cover the gap, right? We'll cover that $5,000 in cash so that you as the seller know that we're serious and that our $305,000 can be backed up. Now that's contingent kind of strategically on our part to go, Well, if it doesn't appraise at 300, right? If it appraises at 290, well, then our stipulation's out. We're saying as long as it's worth what you say it's worth, we'll cover any gap based on what we're offering you, right? So if the appraisal came in at 302, we would cover the extra $3,000, the difference in the 302 and the 305, right? So try to have a little bit of cash for going above the listing price and backing it up. And then really your last one, which would be kind of your big unknown, is your down payment. The reason I say it's an unknown is because we don't know. I mean, you might be using a VA loan, in which case, yeah, there isn't a down payment. If you want there to not be a down payment, you could still use a VA loan and have it. You chewing that beaver pretty good down there, huh? You could still put down a down payment on a VA loan, but you don't have to, right? That's, of course, the benefit of a VA loan. If you're a first-time home buyer, you might be in programs where you don't have a down payment, which is not like you get a free ride. You know, they're making up for it in other areas, but you might have an FHA loan where it's like 3.5% down. You might be 5%, 10% down on conventional loans. You might be 20% down. It just depends, right? So the down payment is something I can't really advise you on because that's just going to depend on your circumstances. But closing costs, an inspection, and in this sort of real estate climate, some cash for going above the listing price, those are the things that I would recommend. So if we look kind of bare bones basics, how much cash should you have? At least try to have like 10 grand that you're messing with. Just so you got enough cash for some closing costs, a little bit of buffer room for inspections, maybe going above the purchase price a little bit, right? So 10 grand would be kind of the threshold that if we return to the original question, how much cash do you need to buy a house? The answer, of course, is it depends, as is the case with almost everything. But if we're gonna attach a number to it, and I'm gonna give you a real answer, I'll say 10 grand's kind of like your starting point, right? That's like your cost of riding the ride of buying a house. So there's that. Let's see. Whiskey recommendation real quick. The video is effectively over, so if you'd like to tune out, you can. I have a couple bottles of High West High Country. I cracked a bottle finally last week. I'd tried it at the actual distillery before, but had not cracked my bottles. And I was reminded pleasantly that this is better than I remember it being. I remember trying it with a buddy in Park City and going, yeah, good, not great. Better than I remember. It's better than I remember. I'll probably go up to 8 out of 10. I'd say that's a solid, right? About $80 a bottle. Well, that was when you could get it. You can't get this anymore, but because it was kind of a local exclusive only thing. It's one of the few booze perks that I have of living in Utah. Beyond that, special thank you, Justin. I don't know if you see this video, but our very small channel here is largely just to validate our bigger channel for people that need real estate advice and stuff like that. But hey, this damn channel is actually producing some clients for us. So just wanted to send a special shout out. Thank you, Justin, for watching the channel and trusting us to help you out in that state that you live in. I won't blow your cover on where you live just in case you're secret ninja or anything like that. But beyond that, if you guys, anyone else watching, if you ever need real estate help, let us know. It's what we do. We do this to give you some free advice. You don't need to pay anything for it, but if you ever need actual help, let us know. Beyond that, take care. We'll see you guys soon.